is Amanda. She is a board certified behavior analyst. She's newly certified and needs your help with her first client. Hans is an 8-year-old diagnosed with level 1 autism. His father, Steve, has been trying to figure out how to overcome some of the challenges they have been facing recently. Amanda met with Steve and Hans in their home to discuss these challenges. Steve said that he can't get Hans to do anything, especially homework. Whenever Steve asks him to do something, Hans always has a reason why he will do it later. Steve wants to help Hans develop a routine and build good study habits. Hans said that his dad only asks him to do stuff when he's already busy. He eventually gets things done, so Hans feels like his dad should just back off. Amanda started by collecting data to identify the most likely function of Hans's behavior. She asked Steve to complete the questions about behavioral function, QABF, conducted an observation, and collected some ABC data. During Amanda's observation, Steve walked into the backyard where Hans was jumping on his trampoline. He said to Hans, "Hey, go get your homework done." Hans responded by covering his ears, closing his eyes, and yelling, "I said I would do it later, Dad." Steve continued to push and cajole Hans in order to try to get him into the house to do his homework. It seemed the harder Steve pushed, the more Hans resisted and yelled. Later in the session, when Hans was inside in the den, Steve tried to take a softer approach, saying, "Hey, buddy, how about you do your homework?" Hans responded from where he lounged in his chair, "Not now, Dad, I'm busy." Steve had been raised on tough love and was very frustrated that Hans wouldn't do what he was asked to do when he was asked to do it. He saw that as a sign of disrespect. This time, Steve got behind Hans's chair and pushed him over to the table where his homework was waiting. Steve told him it was time to get it done. Amanda continued to collect the data she needed and then got to work. Back in her office, Amanda sifted through all the data she collected to form a hypothesis of the function of Hans's refusal. Although it seemed as though refusing to complete tasks might be maintained by escape, the data showed that it was more likely maintained by access to his father's attention. Through her coursework and supervised field experience, Amanda learned a lot about differential reinforcement, both with and without extinction. But there are a lot of different kinds, and she's not sure which one is most appropriate here. Should she choose differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior with extinction, differential reinforcement of low rates, or differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior without extinction? Choose the one you think is best and see what happens next. Amanda tells Steve she wants him to use differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior without extinction. She explains that the intervention provides reinforcement for a behavior that's incompatible with the target behavior. Since they are targeting refusal, Steve will provide reinforcement whenever Hans agrees to complete a task. Amanda explains that extinction is an intervention commonly utilized with differential reinforcement procedures, during which reinforcement is withheld during the target behavior. She advises that Steve continue to provide attention to Hans in the form of gentle reminders to complete the tasks. She wants to avoid any potential extinction burst and feels that providing a reinforcer after he completes a task will be sufficient to reduce the target behavior. Steve knows that Hans enjoys TV and has restricted his access. He approaches Hans in his bedroom and tells him, "You can earn 15 minutes of TV for every worksheet you complete." Hans responds, "Give me a break. I'll do it later." Not the reaction that Steve had been hoping for. He does as Amanda suggested and continues to gently remind him that his homework needs to get done. Hans continues to refuse to do his homework but follows Steve as he leaves the room. Steve continues to periodically ask Hans to do his homework, saying, "Just get your homework done now and you can watch TV." Hans replies, "Nah, I'll get to it later." During Amanda's next home visit, Steve reports that Hans hasn't done much homework all week. He says he hasn't watched TV in days. It seems like he doesn't even care. Amanda needs to decide what to do next. Choose the intervention you think will be best and see what happens next. Amanda recommends that Steve stick with DRI without extinction. It's only been a short time, and these interventions sometimes take a while. She believes now that he has received some reinforcement that he will gradually begin to do his homework more. Steve agrees to keep trying. He finds Hans in his bedroom again and says, "You can earn 15 minutes of TV for every worksheet you complete." Hans replies, "I know, I'll do it eventually." Truly exhausted from constantly trying to get Hans to do his homework, Steve says, "Please get your homework done. Your favorite show is starting soon." Hans says, "I said later, Dad," and makes no move toward his homework. Steve called Amanda to discuss the situation. He told her that Hans still doesn't do homework more than a few minutes per week. He just doesn't know what to do. Choose the option you think is best and see what happens next. Amanda recommended that Steve continue to use DRI with extinction. She explained that extinction bursts were a common side effect of extinction and the behavior would likely decrease relatively quickly once the burst was over. Steve continued to offer reinforcement for completing tasks and walked away from Hans when he refused to comply. Steve began to see some gradual improvements. One day, Steve approached Hans while out in the backyard and said, "You can earn 15 minutes of TV for every worksheet you complete." Hans responded, "I just want to relax when I come home from school." Steve recognized that this wasn't an outright refusal and encouraged Hans to go inside with him to get started. Once inside, it seemed difficult to motivate Hans to actually do the work. He was frustrated by his